warm welcome to the special edition of Talk Time. My guest today is Air Chief Marshal S. Krishnaswamy, former Chief of the Indian Air Force. A combat pilot himself, he saw action in the 1965 war against Pakistan and has been credited with raising the first electronic squadron in the Indian Air Force. Air Chief Marshal S. Krishnaswamy, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
Air Chief Marshal, as a former Air Chief, do you feel a lot more comfortable now that Indian Air Force has finally got the high-end Rafale fighter jets?
I retired from the Air Force in the end of 2004 December. That is about 16 years ago. And I'm not only talking about Rafale. In last 15 years or so, the Air Force has made a tremendous improvement in their operational system, operational support system, the standard skill levels and training and so on and so forth. For example, they have been exercising intensely with very many foreign air forces like the US, British, French, Israeli, Singaporean and UAE and Oman and so on and so forth. And they were literally flying global along with our tanker aircraft and support services. And this is very unique experiences. And this is the right time for the Rafale to join, and which gives certainly a great momentum to our improvement of our what do you call it, operational capabilities.
Yeah. Now, if I'm not wrong, the decision to modernize or upgrade the Indian Air Force was taken in 2001. You were probably the Air Chief then. Now, are you happy the way the modernization has taken place in the past 2 decades? You have touched a little bit on this in my previous question.
See, I had been looking after the procurement from 87 for 3-4 years as a Director Air Staff Requirement, and then again at 93 as the ACAS, Assistant Chief of Air Staff Plans, and then a very short while as a Deputy Chief, and then I moved on to operations. So I have about something like 10-year experience in procurement process. In my experience, I was involved in the induction of Mirage 2000. I did the entire work on induction of the Sukhoi 30 MKI, including its what do you call, converging on the design philosophy with the Sukhoi Design Bureau, and eventually for putting up the so-called cabinet paper on the procurement of first 40 Sukhoi 30 aircraft. So subsequently, we inducted AWACS. That is a very unique program where we have now 3 of them. We inducted the tanker aircraft. In my time, we inducted first 6 of them. We have more number. Then we initiated the program with the DRDO with this so-called mini AWACS, which they have developed, and now they have 2-3 of them flying. And like that, there are many other programs. And one of the major part of the program is the support system of command, control, and communication integration in the Indian Air Force. That is right from north to south, east to west, in a very integrated manner. All the operational and support functions. It's very, very unique. And so I'm more than satisfied from what I see of what the Air Force has done in the last since my retirement, and I'm quite aware what today they are capable. For example, in fact C-130 induction, the process started in my time. Then we added more number. We have now the C-17s, which can airlift us T-90 tank to Ladakh. And many other, and we have now the Chinook, we have the Apache, We have the LCH and LCA has been introduced. It's quite fascinating.
Absolutely. You see, Air Chief Marshal, you know, the first five of the 36 ready-to-fly Rafale Zs have landed in India at a time when the standoff with China along the LAC is hogging the limelight. Now, do you agree that our new acquisition will possibly act as some kind of a deterrent?
I would say the arrival of Rafale at this time is almost it's a coincidence. It was not planned that it has got to be there in place, and when China makes a noise, it was never envisaged. It was a program which is something like 15-year-old, and and the nation is very familiar. All the ups and downs and the battle that was fought almost at the political level on induction of Rafale, and we had to go right up to the Supreme Court. And never in the history of Indian Air Force that the Air Force was called by Supreme Court to answer a few queries on professional matters, and we went through all that, and it was it's pretty harder than fighting a battle. And the end of that, then the program was such that it takes a certain number of months and years for the aircraft to be manufactured and our crew to be trained. And they arrived just the other day. It was not planned that it has got to arrive at a particular juncture. Then we are having some problem with Chinese. It's not intended so to speak.
Now you see, a whole lot of people in the media and elsewhere have started comparing the Rafale with the Chinese J-20 fighter jets. Now, as a combat pilot yourself, would you like to compare two machines or what would be your approach at assessing the two machines?
Which aircraft you said? Chinese?
J-20.
Yeah. You see, I know Rafale very well. What it's capable of. The J-20 is relatively new. So if you look at it from end to end, so you start from the engine part of it, it's a very old engine, and they initially started with so-called the older series of engine which initially flew with the Su-30MK. Yeah. And now they are continuing with that, and they are supposed to replace them with the so-called Chinese own engines. And I have very, very grave doubt on how good the Chinese engines are, because in my experience, I've heard from the horse's mouth, there are issues with the Chinese themselves acknowledge in developing a very advanced jet engine. And that was some time ago. And I'm sure they've overcome some of the issues. But it's still a kind of a challenge for China. The other part of it is the radar. Whatever that it may be said about that radar has got a E-scan and various other things, we have gone through very detailed. We have very detailed knowledge of what air interception radars are, and in fact, we have evolved what the Su-30 should have. Along with the Russian, a lot of experiments were conducted.
Right.
And subsequently, for LCA, we chose the Israeli radar. We know that very, very well indeed. And now we are trying to design our own indigenous E-scan radar. These are all, E-scan is a technology. And it doesn't mean an aeroplane has A-scan radar. It doesn't mean that it's ultimate. So there are a lot of impracticalities in it. For example, flying over Himalayas, there are a whole lot of ground interference. You know, the hills are pretty high. And so we have done the clutter mapping of Himalayas, and it is taken care of, for example, in the Rafale and in the LCA radar, and so on and so forth. It's a very complex piece of equipment, the radar. And J-20, as far as I'm concerned, is still an experimental prototype, and it is certainly it doesn't have any stealth capability as it is said. They have tried, of course, the technology they have tried, And I don't believe that it has all that it has to have, because fairly it's a very large aeroplane and it's very difficult to hide it. And we have detected that radar from our own combat plane. I mean,
That means
we detected that aircraft with our own machines. So we don't believe that it's that pretty strong. And as far as the Chinese weapons are concerned, they have done a remarkable progress indeed, but they are nowhere comparable to European and the Western what do you call equivalent. And the last and most important part of it is, I have my grave doubt about the skill sets of Chinese pilots. And although they have all that, they are trained well within whatever they are capable of. They are pretty strong and they're very focused. And yet, I don't believe they have a kind of exposure. Although we are aware that they have trained to some extent with the Pakistani pilots, with Pakistani interaction in the JF program and their own mutual exercises. But I don't believe that's good enough.
Absolutely.
The Chinese fighter pilots have not come to the so-called world class mainly because they have no exposure, and they are quite stressed. You know, they have to fly right on the on the Japanese shores, or what you call South China Sea, as well as in the Tibet. And then they have Indians who are threatening them. So they are in a very difficult position.
Very difficult.
So give whatever the machine that you can give them. Best of luck. And we are very. I'm personally very sympathetic for them, but I don't believe that they impose any great challenge, whether they're pilots, their skills, or their machines.
Now, you see,
I've not heard much about them, what their strategy and tactics are. These can be secret, but one gets to know. So they are experimenting. We wish them all the very best.
Air Chief Marshal, you know, the Indian Air Force currently has 31 squadrons, each with anything between 16 and 18 jets. The assessment was to have a total of 42 squadrons. My question is having the numbers really the key in the event of a two-front war with Pakistan and China?
I would like to say that this is a very old history. For the last 30 years, we've been taking up with the government, and the government is very much aware of. After all, India is a developing country, and the government has to lay priorities on their expenditure and the budget and so on and so forth. We've had many difficulties that the country has faced. Amidst of all this, the government has done its share in looking after the defense, and I'm particularly very grateful today the kind of induction that we have had. And for example, in the transport and helicopter area, we are very strong. And 32, 39, or 42 combat squadron is certainly numbers are important, because, as you rightly said, that we can be stressed from end to end to fight a multiple war, or China themselves can raise a front all along a very wide border across the Himalayas. So the numbers are very important. And the numbers are required. One is, of course, mount operations. And also the numbers are required to train our crew. They have to be combat ready all the time. And our training centers are churning out. But it's not easy to get an operational pilot very quickly. It takes about 3 to 5 years. And so one has, in the Air Force, was pretty hard. And just by arrival of another, even if you're given some 50 aeroplanes, that doesn't mean that we have enough crew to fly them to that skill level required. So it is an effort. It's an effort required in all front. The Air Force has to do a bit. The government is doing its bit. So at the end of it, one has to evaluate the satisfaction level at any particular time. So the right person to answer that will be the current Chief of Air Staff, and of course the other two services, how they feel about it. But I feel looking back at the history, we are pretty well off For now, for example, I was the air chief when we were nearly going into war with Pakistan during Parakram. The number of aeroplanes that we had at that time, today we are far better off than what we were in Parakram, and there we were all set to go to war. So by and large, we are better off, and still, of course, the numbers mean a lot. Both the aircraft, not only the aircraft, the crew, the weapon systems. We must have adequate weapons, and a lot of effort being done about it. So it is an integrated effort.
On this note, I'll go for a short break, but don't go away. I am in conversation with Air Chief Marshal Retired S. Krishnaswamy, the former chief of the Indian Air Force. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with the former Air Chief Marshal S. Krishnaswamy. Now, you see, India may have in the coming days, apart from the Rafales and the Tejas light combat aircrafts, around 250 other jets like the MiG-29, Sukhoi 30, MKI. Now, many think that India is actually preparing for a possible two-front war in case that happens.
You see, what is it is the responsibility of the Air Force, and of course, as well as the Ministry of Defense, that we have a certain number of squadrons. You for a moment, you don't think about 42 squadrons. We have X number of squadrons. Now, they have to be kept in a very good state of readiness. And that requires a certain budget support. For example, spares, weapons, training, and so on and so forth. Now, if we have that going, that itself is a big bonus. Today, for example, we have a contract in a Rafale program, which is very unique. In this, the complete spares and maintenance and backup support is assured to give a 75% serviceability of all operational systems on the aircraft for a certain number of years. And it is a very, what should I say, it is a very progressive way of logistics and support management. And we didn't have this so-called such a imaginative, such a brilliant kind of a proposal of logistics support. For example, typically we suffered in the Russian fleet serviceability state of a bit lower than what we wanted. And for that, we have to go and procure, where to purchase, which is a very long drawn affair. And it is very different now. No, it's much better we are.
Right. Now you see, coming to the India-China standoff in Ladakh, is it fair to keep talking about 1962 or to remind ourselves about what had happened in 1962? Is it a fair thing to do so?
In 1962, the Air Force was absent. The lot of books written on that. I don't have to talk about 1962. It came as a surprise, and for whatever the good reason, they're all there, and you can hit the Google and find out why wasn't Indian Air Force used. It's a very big. It requires a bit of research. So I won't go into that. The combat readiness and our capability vis-a-vis 1962 is no comparison. It's no comparison. I'm talking about from the Army or from the Air Force or the Navy. We are way, way superior than that. So I don't want to, give any further illustration. It's incomparable now, what we are.
Right. Now you see, after the Balakot surgical strike, do you think there is expectation in the country of a tough response to the aggressive posturing by the Chinese as well? After all, we have lost 20 of our brave soldiers.
You see, it is the responsibility and the job of the military to be ready always. And in one of that readiness is about the strategy, how the force is employed, and the tactics to be followed. So the Air Force, Indian Air Force, our attack at Balakot was a very fine example of the kind of the deep capability of the strategy that they can pull it off, the surprise element of surprise that they can achieve, and the destructive capability of just some 4 or 8 aeroplanes that they can demonstrate. So that shows the so-called Indian Air Force capability on from times to come. Now, as far as China is concerned, the way I won't go too much into detail. The way that they are, what you call, they strategized is something they use. They're looking at a very large Second World War like strategy where they'll employ massive force. It's a size, and they come in waves, and so on and so forth. But ours is a very unique, I won't go much into this, but our warfare, the strategy and tactics are very different that can take on any large force coming in a manner that we believe that they are capable of putting. And I'm sure the Air Force is adequately prepared. It will be very exciting how we differ and how we're going to face each other.
Now, you see, the technology has been upgraded, the machines have changed, technology has changed for the better. What about the political leadership? Have you noticed any major changes in the way? I'm not talking about any particular political party. I'm just talking about political leadership in general. My question is, have you noticed any change over the years as to how our new political and government leaders look at or approach issues? Is there a new thinking?
Yeah, this is. I would like to state this from my own personal view. It's not a reflection of the services of the government or anyone. I've been in the Air Force for well over 43 years. So I've been observing other militaries, how they perform. If you take the Chinese now, the Chinese, right from the Communist Party, which overhangs on top, they're fully integrated with the military. Whereas we work totally differently. We are a democracy. So I won't go into how we work. Now, for example, engineering, technology, development, etc., is decided from top down, and then they percolate down to the military. And the military participates in complete development program with the industry, at the political level, etc. The top of the military leadership is part of that political party. So they are integrated. I don't believe that in China they write a statement of case like we do and keep pushing the file for 10 years for an acquisition program where we have to justify all the time to some of our bureaucrats. Firstly, that's the first step before we go to the political level with the cabinet paper, that why you need particular weapon or weapon system. We spend years on that. Then when we get to so-called response to RFP and so on, it takes a couple of years to resolve and another couple of years to negotiate. I mean, it's so unique in the world today. I don't believe Chinese are like that. They don't have to go around running around with a file in hand to get the military up to a standard. But I leave it at that because we are different. I'm proud of what we are, but we are very, very different. We can still take them on. That's not the point. But if you're looking at the political, at the military level, they have a total integration. And I wish at a political level, there is a technology group, which, at one stage we had put up what you call earlier on the Prime Minister, the earlier government, of the need for a aerospace commission, where all aerospace activity to be integrated under one vertical. And that was given a serious thought, but because it won't meet the political requirement, it just couldn't go further. But having said that there is a requirement to drive technology right from the political level. And I currently, my personal understanding, I may be faulted in that, I may not know up to date, they do not have such a group that who will oversee. They leave it to the so-called institutions and the bureaucracy. And every time the institution put up that is questioned by bureaucracy, the bureaucracy doesn't have the wherewithal
Yes.
to evaluate technology and engineering. So they start putting one
No.
against the other and ask, if Air Force puts up, the DRDO is asked, and so on and so forth. So I won't go much into the detail. Whereas there is at a political level, we require, if you want to really modernize and come up, we need a technology management at the national top level.
Air Chief Marshal, why, according to you, is China embarking on such aggressive posturing against India? Is it domestic compulsion, or is it out of a real desire to grab territory?
I believe it is part of their national objective, that they want to prove themselves to be strong, and they don't consider India to be any sizable country or a force or economy to reckon with. They believe that they are bigger, mightier, and therefore they are the big boss, and we are expected to hear them and kowtow to them. That is their approach. And they are not. It's not a democracy. It's a communist. So it is their way of living. It's the way of so-called
right,
demanding a so-called position and a respect. So so therefore I can't say why they are doing it. We have to, only they know better.
My final question to you, Air Chief Marshal, how do you see the road ahead in India-China relations after this huge trust deficit brought about by what happened in Galwan?
I believe that the only way they will understand us is by so-called by our position of strength. And we have to show we are strong enough and determined enough to resist them.
Air Chief Marshal S. Krishnaswamy, thank you very much indeed for speaking to me on Talk Time.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.